Hey guys, welcome back to the Always in Season podcast, episode number 20. Today we're going to be doing our NFC predictions as week one is just a few weeks away.
Yeah, first up, there's actually been some, good conversations around the league. We still don't know who the Patriots starter is going to be, and we don't know who the Steelers starter is going to
Yeah.
be. But everything else we know, which we'll run through. Also, Aaron Rodgers' book came out, Out of the Darkness, written by Ian O'Connor. Fascinating stuff that we've been hearing. I know you can pre-order the book or you can order it now because it came out officially on the 20th, I believe. I'm definitely going to read that book because he's one of the most fascinating guys in the
He's
NFL.
he's very intelligent, very out there for sure. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
obviously we've seen like what he can do on the field, and then I would say mostly in recent years he's definitely he had his darkness retreat and just a lot of different things going on. And I'm always fascinated to see what he does after football.
Yeah.
I really think he should do a podcast because he just has so much insight in the world and just in his life.
And Ian O'Connor wasn't being like a friend to Rogers when writing this book. It wasn't like he's trying to paint Rogers as like this perfect guy or anything. It was interviews. Some were anonymous. Some actually put their
Yeah.
name down of both the good and maybe the not so good things about Aaron Rodgers or
Yeah.
the relationship with him. Greg Jennings, who we've heard him say a lot of things over the years about him and Rodgers' relationship, he didn't participate in this book, but they did have him on the show, Ian O'Connor,
Yeah.
recently, and him and it was basically a back and forth between him and Greg Jennings, which was interesting. Some people were calling it a therapy session for Greg, but yeah, so that came out. But now up to the real weekly news. Falcons signed standout cornerback AJ Terrell to a 4-year, $81 million deal. It includes $65.8 million in full guarantees, largest guarantee ever given to a corner on a 4-year deal.
Yeah, I mean, still pretty young, but the Falcons don't have a lot of bright spots. But obviously, having a lockdown guy in your secondaries, what
The Falcons don't have a lot of bright spots.
on their defense?
Yeah, they do.
Who?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
Like who?
Just
Okay.
keep going. Keep going with your point.
Anyways,
This weekly.
he got paid very well as he should have. But yeah, having a lockdown guy in your secondary is very important, and I know for sure for them they expect a lot going forward, especially with Kirk and just a new offense, new team, but keeping one of their core guys around.
The Chiefs are signing center Creed Humphrey to a 4-year, $72 million extension.
I know this was rumored for a while, and can never protect Mahomes is enough, but locking him down and keeping one of Mahomes' most trusted guys around is very important.
Yeah. This was kind of a surprise to some people. It broke yesterday. Commanders traded wide receiver Jahan Dotson and a fifth rounder to the Eagles for a third round and multiple seventh round picks. What do you think about that?
That's a good move for the Eagles. They have definitely have some weapons, but having Jahan Dotson, another guy for Hurts to throw to, is only going to make them better. It's kind of rare to see a lot of like in interdivision trading that doesn't very happen very often, but I think it's a good move for the Eagles.
Yeah, it definitely gives them more depth. I was a little surprised that the Commanders got rid of him because they're pretty high on him. Like when they drafted him, he was one of my favorite players in his
Yeah.
draft class. But like you said, a good move for the Eagles. The Seahawks traded cornerback Michael Jackson to the Panthers for linebacker Michael Barrett, and Jackson started 21 games in his career so far.
Yeah, the Panthers. I don't know. They a lot of different moves for a season like for them prior to a season that I know they're not expecting much. Um, but yeah, just kind of like a real retool for them. So again, a minor move for a team that really doesn't have a lot
Yeah,
going on.
like we talked about the Panthers, new head coach. They were the worst team in football last year. They're really just trying to see how they improve. Even if it's not necessarily their record improving all that much, it's more
Yeah,
about like those in-game improvements. Are they fighting? Are they in the games?
yeah,
Like, is it competitive or is it just getting blown out? Is their offensive line still
yeah.
completely trash? Lions All Pro offensive tackle Penny Sewell. He had a little bit of a scare because he had a foot problem. He left practice on Wednesday, but it sounds like it's a minor ankle injury and should be good. Nothing too serious, which is great. I mean, they paid
They
him,
paid him and they can't
and
lose him.
he is so
Yeah,
crucial to their team.
yeah, they cannot lose him, especially after pay him. I mean, especially you don't obviously don't want to lose one of your star guys, but after you just pay him, that's gonna hurt even more. So I'm sure he'll probably won't practice or anything until week one just to make sure he's 100%.
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers, like we talked about him. He is officially not going to play in the last preseason game, so his first game action is going to be against the Niners on Monday Night Football, which I cannot wait for that game.
Yeah.
Like, popcorn bucket's going to be full because
Yeah.
that's going to be a great game.
I mean, we saw there was a clip of Rodgers back. He threw a deep ball to Garrett Wilson. Say what you want about Rodgers, having him back is great for the game. His talent obviously is still there. His arm talent, I should say. Obviously we'll see how he moves with the Achilles and everything. But I think it's very interesting that he's not going to see the field until you play the reigning NFC champs. But I'm sure he'll be ready, and hopefully his O line can protect him this year.
The Browns traded kicker Cade York to the Commanders for a conditional seventh rounder. I thought that was kind of an interesting move for them, but I guess I'm not too surprised, except for the fact that they were really excited about him when they had him. But
Yeah, kickers. I know a lot of teams have their kickers. A lot of teams are still trying to figure out their kickers. But you don't really see a kicker traded very often. But I know Cade York was one of them, one of the kickers that kind of people were speculating could have been like on the market, and he was. So, good for them that they traded for him. But again, yeah, not you don't see a kicker traded very often.
yeah, it's a good pickup for the Commanders. The Broncos named Bo Nix as their Week 1 starting quarterback, and they will be playing the Seattle Seahawks Week 1. I think this is a very interesting move for the Broncos. We've talked about how rookie quarterbacks they usually need time to develop, and throwing them in the fire is like can
With Sean Payton,
it can cause a lot of damage early in their career, but he clearly won the QB1
Yeah.
spot. He outplayed Zach Wilson and Jared Stidham. But what you don't want is for Bo Nix to start, and then what? What if they don't do well? What if he's struggling? Because preseason, yeah, you're doing great, okay, buddy, but it's not regular season. You're not seeing all the top teams' defenses. Like, this is rough. He played well against the Packers. Well, the Packers had 31. Their 31 best players not playing. So it's like, all right, how good are you? And I love Bo Nix. He's one of the older rookies. I mean, he was in college for a while. He's married. Like he's an older guy. He's smart. Like he knows the game well. But what you don't want is for him to struggle early, and then what? They bench him and put Stidham in now or Wilson? Like, do they fight it out? But then what? You have Sean Payton as your coach, and he's patient with quarterbacks. So I don't know, but I'm happy for Bo Nix.
Yeah.
He, like I said, he did earn it.
I think we both were kind of in the same boat as like, oh, he could start later on in the season. He did play very well in preseason, but like you said, it's backups, it's third strings, it's fourth strings, it's guys that probably won't see the field a whole lot. But yeah, it'll be interesting because the Broncos probably won't do a whole lot. They're not expected to do a whole lot. I just hope that Sean Payton doesn't get impatient with Bo because, like you said, he's older. Maybe that's gonna be like, all right, I think he's 24, 25. He's not 20. He's been around. He's been in college for a while, so he's more developed in that way. But still, college and NFL are way different. I hope he does well, and I just hope Sean Payton doesn't ruin this one.
Yeah, and a key with rookie quarterbacks is patience. Like you have to be patient with them. If you're not, then it just kind of looks like you're not believing in them. We'll kind of get into that with the quarterback from the 2020 draft class in a little bit. But also, okay, so the Eagles released tight end CJ Uzomah. I kind of find that funny because, like, remember when people were all like high on him back when he was the Jets, and I was like, yeah, just out there.
Yeah, I don't know. He had a good year. He had a solid year, but again, he's not really. He kind of fizzled out after that 1 year, and now he's completely fizzled out.
Yeah. The 49ers and wide receiver Brandon Ayuk had another meeting. It sounds like talks are continuing to progress about getting a long-term extension. Still nothing official. And those reports were earlier in the week, and now it's Friday, and we still don't have anything. Is this going to be the kind of thing where it's like September 4th, we're finally getting the day before the season? Like, what's happening here?
This drama has gone on longer than it's been a while since we've had this long of a wide receiver drama, and not to knock Ayuk, but it's not like he's a top guy. It's not he's not the best player on their best receiver on their team by any means. But if they want to continue to drag this out for attention or for drama, I don't really know. I don't really care. I just want it to be over with because the longer he's not like signed a long term deal, there's going to be speculation of, oh, is he going to go back? Is he going to get traded? Are they really going to sign this deal if there's all these rumors but nothing official? So we'll see what happens.
It's kind
But
of funny because like Jamar Chase, the guy wanting to get paid, like he isn't probably the best receiver in the league, but at least he's the best one on his team.
yeah,
Where yeah, like with Ayuk, like not only is he not the best receiver in the league, he's not the best on his own team, and you're really fighting this contract. I mean, I don't know.
yeah,
He couldn't have been going somewhere then where he doesn't want to be. Like the Niners, you have a chance to win a Super Bowl
yeah,
with them. Play your role. Like I don't know. That's my opinion. Um, so the Steelers center Nate Hairbig, I believe is how you pronounce it. He suffered a torn rotator cuff. He's expected to miss significant time. It could end up being the whole season. I hate these preseason training camp
yeah.
injuries. It's so sad. Yeah, heal up quick. Maybe, hopefully, he can come back in the
Yeah, that
main
Steelers
season.
offense. I mean, in preseason, even with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields fighting for that spot, they still don't really have the level of, I would say star power, but what we kind of expect for a like Russell Wilson. Like, there's really no big improvement. I know it's preseason, so let's not overreact, but I just really haven't seen much of a difference. But again, losing a center, like I was going to your backup center, is not going to help the situation. But hopefully, they can figure it out and they can be better than what they've shown in preseason.
I think we're not seeing an offensive identity with the Steelers right now, but like you said, it is preseason, and a lot of teams are really vanilla on offense, especially. So maybe we're just not seeing,
Yeah,
anything where they're really just not showing anything, and then they'll break out in week one against the Falcons or
yeah,
throughout the season. Um, but the competition's still there between Wilson and
yeah,
Fields, and Stephen A. Smith went off
yeah,
on Russell Wilson saying, "You are fighting for your career. This is not against Josh Allen. This is not against Lamar. It's against Justin Fields." And what you're just kind of sitting back, like he feels like Wilson's not stepping up. I have a few friends who are Steelers fans. It's really split on who they want,
yeah,
and some are at the point where they're like, we think both of them will be the same. Like whoever we put in there, it's gonna be, will win. We'll have a
yeah.
winning record, but it won't be great. Same like that we've seen it
Like,
from the
yeah,
Steelers. Some think we're gonna make the playoffs with either one. We just need to commit to one, and then others think we're gonna suck with both. Like it's very
yeah,
all over the board. So I think their offensive line is a problem, and
yeah,
now with the other injuries, that does not help.
yeah.
But hopefully, we can see more of their offensive identity in the regular season. This has been tough. We keep getting these quarterback news. Even in the AFC, we have two in the AFC starting quarterback news after we made our AFC predictions.
Yeah.
But the Raiders named Gardner Minshew their starting quarterback. I'm so happy for him. I think he earned it.
Yeah, he played phenomenal last year with the Colts after Richardson went down. I really think I wouldn't have wanted Aiden or anybody else but Gardner to step in. He's more polished. You saw him in Jacksonville a few years ago. He did well. The Raiders need to find something. Hopefully, they can improve on their season last year. But having Gardner, a veteran guy that's seen a lot, is definitely the right move for them.
I will say, I'm one of those people who I watch preseason games, and I watched the Raiders Cowboys preseason game, and Gardner Minshew looked terrible, and Aiden O'Connell looked terrible. Every single one of the quarterbacks on that field looked terrible. Both defenses looked like the best defenses in NFL history because all the quarterbacks were terrible. But I'd rather have Minshew than O'Connell as
Yeah,
well. I think he'll do a good job of helping the team have energy, have an identity, and when things aren't going well, I think he'll still be able to bring the team up. I think he has that leadership skill, and then when they are doing well, he's going to be fun.
hmm,
The real question is, when things aren't going well, how's Devontae going to react? That's really
right.
the question. But congrats to Gardner. The Vikings are signing All-Pro cornerback Stephon Gilmore. It's a 1-year deal worth up to $10 million. It's just a good ad for their defensive veteran
Veteran
addition.
depth.
But
Kind of an I would say insignificant move, but the Vikings, especially with JJ going down, I don't think they're definitely not planning to win the division. Maybe they can surprise a lot of people, maybe make the playoffs. But again, just another veteran guy that's just going to help with their depth. But yeah, again, a good solid deal for him, and he sticks around in the league for a little bit longer yet.
yeah, And I'll get into this more when we do our predictions, but I don't think the Vikings are going to be some great team, but I think they're going to be. I think people are really sleeping on them. I've heard people say they'll be the best fourth fourth
Yeah.
team in the division. I've heard people say that they're going to be, a top 5 NFL draft pick. Maybe that's true, but I think they're going to be better than people are giving them credit for. I think Sam Darnold, even with JJ McCarthy doing well in the preseason, I
Yeah.
think if he hadn't gotten hurt, I still think it would have been smart to start Sam Darnold like we've talked about. And maybe he ended up playing the whole
Yeah.
season. We don't know. I mean, they also have Aaron Jones. He's a great running back. They have Justin Jefferson. They have Jordan Addison. They have a good offense, and now they're adding some more depth to their defense. They're not some team who's just going to get rolled over. They're going to fight in these games. They're going to have competition. They might pull out some close wins.
Yeah, and I think Kevin O'Connell, I think he does a phenomenal job there. And I've seen a lot of people after they sat JJ, they're like, give O'Connell an extension. Like, you have your future right there, and O'Connell needs to be a part of it. They are prioritizing JJ's health as they should.
Mm-hmm.
They're not rushing him back. They're taking the long term route with him. They know they are not a Super Bowl caliber team this year. But yeah, I think if they go out and win 8 or 9, maybe even 10 games, I would be shocked, but I don't think it would be like unrealistic.
Yeah. Bengals kicker Evan McPherson agrees to terms on a 3-year, $16.5 million extension. We saw Harrison Butker get an extension. Now we see McPherson, one of the best kickers.
Yeah,
in the league.
there's a handful of top tier kickers, and McPherson has been one of those for the past couple of years. Having a reliable kicker is cannot go overlooked. Some people take it for granted at times, but it's if you can have a guy that can come in and hit a 40-50 yarder pretty consistently, then you need to make sure that sticks around.
We're having more contract talks. The Cowboys and quarterback Dak Prescott have had good conversations regarding contract extension. This is still very, very early beginning talks, but it's not
Yeah.
moving anywhere, and it's going well. I don't think Dak's in a rush. He doesn't seem to be in a rush to
Yeah.
get one. He's also completely accepted the fact, like we've talked about over a month ago now, that he has accepted the fact that he might not be a Cowboy his whole career. He
Yeah.
might move on, but I think Dak is one of the best guys character-wise in the league. I think he is team first. I think he's focused on the season. He's not focused on his contract. If something gets done, great. If it doesn't, again, he'll take it in stride. Jaden Daniels was named quarterback 1 for the Washington Commanders. I'm excited to see Jaden Daniels as a rookie quarterback. I'm excited to see Dan Quinn as the head coach of the Commanders. I'm excited to see Austin Eckler, how he's doing there. Like, they have just some fun pieces that I'm just curious to see how this all works together. I don't want to call it an island of misfit toys necessarily, but it's kind of like we have this, like, the new guy, quarterback, and then we have this old guy who used to be really good, and now it's like, is he still going to be good? Is he going to be rejuvenated in Eckler? Dan Quinn, who's like, he was a head coach, and then he started not doing well as a head coach, and then he was the best defensive coordinator, and now but then he got ambushed in the playoffs, and now we have him as a head coach again. Like, what do we have? I don't know. I think this is really fun.
Yeah, Jaden is definitely the guy I'm the highest on out of this draft class. I really want him to succeed. I think he was overlooked a little bit in college. He's got a phenomenal arm, a great personality. Just love the way he carries himself. And I think with the Commanders not really having a lot of expectations that allows Daniels to have more freedom and just go out there and play and see what they have and build for the future, I guess.
Yeah, and I think Jaden Daniels was my favorite quarterback in the class as well. I just think he's the most ready. But I'm excited to see him start, and I think him more than any of these other quarterbacks. I mean, you could put Caleb in there, but I think it's smart to have them start right away and see what they have. I wouldn't have been opposed to them not starting right away because, again, I'm all for letting them watch before, like, and develop off the field, before they have their chance on the field. But I'm really excited to see what Jaden Daniels can do. And I think the reason I feel comfortable with Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams going out there right away is because I do believe the teams will be patient with them. Where some of the quarterbacks who are later picks or even later rounds, it's like they might not be patient with them. They might be like, okay, next up. So, all right. Now here's the big news, or the big conversation from the week. So, Tua was on this podcast, and he was asked about the difference between playing under Mike McDaniels and playing under Coach Brian Flores, who is now the defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. There's been a lot of quotes taken from what Tua said and them analyzing it and bringing it down. That always makes me upset because it's going to make Tua or make Flores or make the podcast, whatever, look bad. I'm going to read the entire Tua quote. He said, to put it in simplest terms, if you woke up every morning and I told you you suck at what you did and that you don't belong doing what you do, that you shouldn't be here, that the sky should be here, and that you haven't earned this right. And then you have somebody else come in and tell you, dude, you are the best fit for this. You are accurate. You are the best whatever. You are this, you are that. Like, how would it make you feel listening to one or the other? You see what I'm saying? And then you hear it, regardless of what it is, the good or the bad. You hear it more and more. You start to actually believe that. I don't care who you are. You can be the president of the United States. You have a terrible person that's telling you things that you don't want to hear or that you probably shouldn't be hearing. You're going to start believing that about yourself. And that's sort of what ended up happening. And it's basically been 2 years of training that out of me. Not just me, but, a couple of guys that have been here from my rookie year all the way till now. Some took that and said, Tua called Brian Flores a terrible person. Some took that and said, Tua, the guy's out of the building. Why are you going off on him?
Yeah.
Just focus on praising McDaniels. Or just say something like, yeah, we just didn't get along. Some have said, Tua, I respect you for coming out and, saying your truth, So it's been reactions all over the board. I think he did a lot better wording things in the first half of that than he did the second half. When he said, I don't care who you are, you can be the president of the United States, you have a terrible person that's telling you things you don't want to hear. That part I didn't love. I don't think he was trying to call Flores a terrible person. I think he got lazy with his verbiage. Also, when he said, people telling you things that you don't want to hear, this is the NFL. You're going to hear things that you don't want to hear, but sometimes you need to hear them.
Yeah.
But then he went on and said things that you probably shouldn't be hearing. That I understand. There is all over the board in every sport in the world, people take criticism, they use their motivation in different ways. Some people, they need to come in and be told, here's what you need to improve at. You suck at this, you suck at that. You don't belong here. They need to be told that to be motivated and then do better and grow and try to prove them wrong. Then there's other guys who, they need somebody who is like, hey, you belong here, I believe in you, now go prove me right. And Tua's clearly under that. Flores is a defensive coach. He's more of an old-fashioned kind of guy, more the Belichick.
Yeah.
Saban, which is interesting because Tua played under Saban, but he's more of that kind of type of I'm going to tell you what you don't want to hear, I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, and I'm going to force that into you. Where Mike McDaniels, he's a younger guy, he's more relatable, he's an offensive-minded, young guru kind of guy. He's like, hey, you're my dude, you're my best friend, I'm going to believe in you, and you're just going to go out there and prove me right, I'm behind you. I think you need to have a happy medium. You got to have a coach who's going to tell you what you don't want to hear, but what you need to hear. But that should not be all that's being driven into you. You also need to have a coach that, that they're believing in you. You know that they're behind you because you are a team. So, Brian Flores was asked about it. I didn't write down his whole quote. It was kind of messy, and that would have been a lot to read. But in his interview, he did say that he has done a lot of reflecting on the situation, and there's always things as a coach that you could do better, and that player relationships is something that he's trying to focus even more on, and that's a really big part of coaching, but that he wishes Tua the best, and he really wants him to succeed.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you bring up, you see it a lot with McDaniels, with guys like LaFleur and Shanahan, these younger guys, McVay, that you can just, from an outsider, from a fan perspective, you can just see that they have a better relationship, or have a pretty good relationship with their guys, specifically their quarterbacks. And some of these older coaches, like Brian Flores,
especially the defensive line.
Yeah. And it's very interesting you say that about Saban, because a lot of the times you see Saban, and when he's drilling into his guys, he's not subtle with it. He's very verbal, he's very vocal. So it makes you wonder what kind of guy he is in the locker room, because a lot of these guys, he gets the best out of them, obviously. And for Tua to say, he didn't say it directly, but say that Saban was not like that. Saban was not like Flores. He had definitely good traits that allowed Tua to be successful and in the position that he is. But I think a lot of these guys like LaFleur and McVay, Shanahan, McDaniels, they come in. You're kind of like, oh, I don't really know much about these guys. You know, their coordinators, their QB's coach, or whatever, and then they develop that relationship with their team, and then that goes a lot in the trust, and then you can implement your system, and then it all works well. But if you have a lot of these old school guys that, okay, I've done this for 10, 15 years, and then you have these new generation of guys that come in and they're not on the same page, you're going to butt heads. You just need to have that happy medium, like you said.
Yeah, and with Saban, I do think, I mean, also college is a different game, and I think college
Yeah,
coaches as a whole tend to be better at making sure that they have that personal connection because it's like, okay,
they're
they're also
kids.
in school, yeah, they're kids, and I do think Saban, we've seen in some of his like off-field interviews, he has a big heart. He's clearly
Yes.
like has that personal relationship with each and every one of his players. So I think even though on the field we would see some stuff where he's drilling it into his guys, you know that they had a relationship and off the field in the locker room things were better, things were cleaner, they were able to talk through things. Also, I mean, we saw Saban have confidence in Tua in the championship game
Yeah.
because he benched Jalen Hurts and put Tua in, and Tua went and won that game. I mean, that was a historic
Yeah.
game. I will never forget watching that, and
It just
that
doesn't happen.
no, but that shows that Saban like believed in Tua. He had his back. Where Flores, I mean, look at the draft class that Tua came in with. It was Joe Burrow. It was Justin Herbert. It was Jordan Love. And Jordan Love, I mean, he was more doubted, or like people weren't expecting him even before he got
Yeah.
drafted to the Packers. People weren't necessarily. They said he could start, he might not. But these other guys, some were saying, hey, maybe Tua is a first rounder. Hey, maybe he goes below Love, below Herbert, and below Burrow. And also it's like, oh, he's injury prone. Oh, he's left-handed. There was all these like question marks around Tua where people seemed, they trusted in the golden boy Joe Burrow,
Yeah.
and Justin Herbert was this fun guy from, Oregon who like
Yeah.
he looked exciting, and he's this like chill, easy to like, responsible, good leader kind of guy. You're just gonna go in there,
Yeah.
be backup, but then earn your spot. Or two, just all these questions like you're gonna be the starter, but you're not ready. Like that's
Yeah.
what he was getting. And then on top of that, getting a defensive-minded head coach who was really, really rough
Yeah.
on him. So I think Brian Flores handled it really well in his interview. I think he handled it very professionally. And I don't know if Tua is going to regret necessarily saying anything he did. I kind of hope Tua comes out and says, like, it's in the past.
Yeah.
I want Brian Flores to do well, but I don't know. I feel like he might need to come out and kind of say something to help it look a little better because
Yeah.
he really went in on Flores. But still, it was very interesting insight. I'd be excited. I'd be interested to hear some other guys who played under Flores and now are playing under McDaniels, because Tua alluded to guys who went through the same thing. I
Yeah.
would be really interested to hear their perspectives. Do they have that same story, or is it different for them? Are they defensive guys? All that.
I really do believe that these younger coaches are a lot better for teams who see, aside from Andy Reid, but everybody loves Andy Reid, and Mahomes is there, so that helps. But a lot of these younger guys can relate more closely to these younger players, these new generation of quarterbacks that come in. And some of these older coaches, not all of them, are kind of stubborn. They've done things this way for so long. You kind of see it. I think a good example is, I would say, Mike McCarthy. Like with Rodgers, him and Rodgers didn't always get along, and then he went to Dallas, and now Dak's there, and he's younger. They get along. He has this confidence in Dak, but I think a younger coach, especially for a team that's rebuilding, is probably the better way to go.
Yeah, and with the McCarthy thing, I don't even necessarily think that it was because of McCarthy being a stubborn. I think he gets along with Dak because Dak was an easier guy to get
Yeah.
along with.
Well, yes.
Than Rodgers, where Rodgers wanted like
His
this
way.
is his way, this
Yeah.
is my way, and this is my team. Especially after he had proven himself,
Yeah.
where Dak I think is a little bit more of like I'm gonna trust my coaches kind of deal.
Yeah.
But I do think some of these guys are stubborn, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I am all for it's the coach above the quarterback. It's the coach above the team. Like I like
Yeah.
that order. That's one of the things I have against the NBA, where a lot of it feels like the players and coaches are equal or the players are above the coaches, and that really bothers me.
There are certain players definitely like that in the NBA.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
So I really like coach above quarterback, but it is also a partnership. It is a team. You got to be able to know how to get through to your players, and it's not going to be the same for every player on your team or every player that you ever coach. But now we're going to run quickly through the preseason week 2 games and then also the 2 week 3 games that we've seen so far, and then we will get into our NFC predictions. Alright, now we're going to just run through quickly the preseason games from week 2 and the 2 we saw from week 3. We're not going to go into detail of all of them, but just to give you the score updates. Starting with Thursday, August 15th, the Eagles beat the Patriots 14-13. Then on Saturday, we had a lot of games. The Ravens beat the Falcons 13-12. And we aren't going to get to see Michael Penix Jr. Again. They feel like they've seen what they need to see from him, which I think is really interesting when he's your rookie and he's your backup. But I guess good for Penix. The Bears beat the Bengals 27-3. Texans beat the Giants 28-10. The Giants are looking rough. The Vikings beat the Browns 27-12. Titans beat the Seahawks 16-15. Colts beat the Cardinals 21-13. Dolphins beat the Commanders 13-6. Bills beat the Steelers 9-3. That game was painful to watch. I will just tell you that. You don't even have to go watch the highlights. There weren't any, so you won't find them. The Jets beat the Panthers 15-12. Rams beat the Chargers 13-9, and some guy really failed at a proposal. The Jaguars beat the Buccaneers 20-7. Cowboys beat the Raiders 27-12. So that was the week 2 preseason games.
It's very interesting to see a lot of these like 15 point, 20 point, like a lot of field goals, not a lot of touchdowns in the preseason.
Yeah. And then for week 3, what we've seen so far. Wait, actually, no, I didn't read the Sunday game. The Broncos beat the Packers 27-2, and the 49ers beat the Saints 16-10. And then for the week 3 games that we've seen so far, we just saw them yesterday. It was Thursday night. The Colts beat the Bengals 27-14, and then the Bears beat the Chiefs 34-21. Bears are undefeated in the preseason, so that's fun. But yeah, so that's kind of what we have. And now we have some fun week 3 preseason games coming up, and I think people are excited for these because it's the last preseason game, and we're so close to
less than 2 weeks. So for those who love football in general, college starts tomorrow officially, but the NFL, the big one, starts in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I cannot wait. It's just right around the corner, and I think everybody can feel the excitement. And we still don't know. There's some things about week 3 preseason we don't know. We don't know if Jordan Love and the Packers starters are going to play. That's still to be determined. They did have a joint practice with the Ravens. So when they had the joint practice with the Broncos, Matt LaFleur said, hey, we're going to not play our starters. They got those practice reps. But then he said, we'll see about the game. So they might want to go out there and have that energy, maybe help them get the win because then they can go in to the regular season with a win. Maybe he'll just hey, we're going to play it safe, not risk any injury. Yeah. It'll be interesting. Of course, they have to go to Brazil for their week 1 game. And then also, it'll be even more interesting to see, Gardner Minshew, how is he playing in the preseason? Because now he's the starter. How is Jaden Daniels looking? How is Bo Nix looking? I want to see these guys that are now officially the guy.
Yeah.
How are they doing with that pressure now? And then we need to know who the Patriots starting quarterback is and who the Steelers starting quarterback is.
The Steelers one, I think everybody's very intrigued to see where they go, especially with a team that especially on their defense always helps them and is a big reason why they do well. But now you have a guy that you kind of expected Russ to be the starter, but now you have Fields there that could be their long-term solution. Yeah. But we'll find out, I'm sure, in about a week or so.
Yeah, and I don't even know, I don't even know if I was a Steelers fan or even if I was just the Steelers head coach. I don't know who I would have right now as their starter. I truly don't. I want to lean Russell Wilson right now. Yeah. That's just my tendency, but it's not some it has to be this guy. And then with the Patriots, that's interesting too because okay, you can do the safe route, do Jacoby Brissett, see how he does, let Drake May sit, let Joe Milton sit, or you can go with Drake May and see what he's got, or you can go with Joe Milton. I mean, he's been looking electric. who knows? You can, I mean, have them each play a quarter, and then whoever played the best in those quarters, have them go back out for the
Yeah,
fourth. I don't know. It's a new team, new head coach. You're not having Brady. You're not having Belichick.
yeah,
Establish an identity. They're not going to be a great team this year, I
no,
don't think. If they do, that will shock a lot of people. But we are still trying to find out who their starting quarterback
yeah,
is going to be, and I'm so excited for
yeah.
that. Yeah, so that's it for the preseason games. Now we're going to get into our NFC predictions, which we will go over, obviously, every game, but then also the NFC seeding, what it'll look like in the playoffs. And then we'll kind of recap what our AFC seeding looked like so that we can get a feel for the whole playoff picture. All right, so now we are going to dive into our NFC predictions. Again, we have not heard each other's. We did not talk about this. But Zach, you can start us off with the NFC North.
Okay, I'll start with the Bears. There's mixed opinions for how this team is going to look. There's a lot of new pieces. Obviously, Caleb is their starter. I still don't think they're going to be ready quite yet. I think they beat the Titans. Like their first three games are all the AFC South: Titans, Texans, Colts. I have them going 1-2 to start that one. They do have a pretty brutal stretch. I mean, they have a break in there with the Vikings, but they've got Packers, Vikings, Lions, and Niners. Both the Lions and the Niners games are on the road, so I think that's their toughest stretch for them.
Yeah, I actually don't think the Vikings is an easy game. It's a division game, and like I said, the Vikings are an aggressive team. They don't
Yeah,
want the Bears, who are the new upcoming team, to go in there to beat them. Like I don't think that's an easy game for them. I do also have them beating the Titans, and I also have them losing to the Texans and the Colts in
yeah,
weeks two
me
and
too.
three. Like you said, they have a tough stretch. I think they have probably one of the easiest schedules through week 10. However, I don't think that they win as many games as maybe some people are thinking they should
Yeah,
in that stretch. That's not necessarily a knock on the Bears, but I mean, you saw if you look at like the Packers last year, who had a young team, not a rookie quarterback though, but a young team. The first half of the season versus the second half were very different, and it wasn't just based on the
yeah,
quarterback play, which it bothers me when people say that because the receivers running the wrong routes. There were tight ends who did not
yeah,
follow their blocking assignments. The defense wasn't communicating properly, and then it just clicked for them, and then they got rolling. Now the Bears, they don't have completely a young team like the Packers did, but they have a lot of young pieces and
a
they
lot of new
have a
pieces.
rookie quarterback. And that is really, really hard to go in and win a bunch of games and get that footing. And again, I don't necessarily think that they're going to hit a big winning streak in the first half or the second half of the season, but I do think that they will be in a lot of games this year. They just won't always get the win. That's what I could see
Yeah,
happening. But I think we see promise. I think we see the exciting highlights of Caleb Williams and Rowan Dunze. I
yeah.
think we see how is Keenan Allen rejuvenated.
Hmm.
I think we'll see hope for the
Yeah,
Bears. I just don't think that it's going to be this playoff team, dark horse,
yeah,
Super Bowl team yet. I think you are putting way too much pressure on this team right now with that. So yeah, I have them ending at 6-11.
yeah. I had 6-11 as well for the Bears. But you kind of saw it like Susanna said with the Packers. They're all young. They all grow together. And even though like Keenan is not a rookie, DJ Moore's not a rookie,
Mm-hmm.
you're still dealing with a new quarterback,
Yeah.
and you don't know all of it. You know the timing isn't there. Nothing is there yet. And I think it will click, but unfortunately, I think it's gonna click, and then they're gonna hit a rough stretch, and they're
Mm-hmm.
gonna. I don't. Yeah, I just don't see a lot of wins, but I see a lot of promise.
I could see them having more promise in their losses than in some of their wins because you can see their improvement. They're just not getting the final score outcome, but they're showing fight in some games that are tough games.
Mhm.
What do you want to do next?
I got the Lions next. They have an early bye, week 5 bye. I have them going
Mm-hmm.
4-0 before their bye week,
Wow.
and then I have them losing against the Cowboys and the Vikings after their bye week, and then um, they win their next six. So I have them like win a few, lose a handful, win a few, lose a handful.
Okay.
Um, I think they split with the Lions and they split with the Vikings. Or sorry, they split with the Packers. They split with the Vikings. They do lose to the Niners in Week 17. The Niners are at that point they're fighting for their top seed in the NFC, so they're rolling. They're the Niners we expect. But yeah, they do have some easy. They have an easy stretch in there. They have Texans, Jaguars, Colts, Bills. I have them winning all of those games. But yeah, I have them finishing at 13-4.
I also have them splitting with the Packers and the Vikings, but I have them sweeping the Bears. I have them starting 3-1 before their bye. I do have them dropping week 2 to the Buccaneers.
Okay.
But I think they beat the Cowboys. That was a game I went back and forth on, but I think after the bye week they're gonna have this team ready. Dan Campbell's gonna have this team ready where they're gonna go into Dallas and beat the Cowboys. But I do have them losing that week 7 in Minnesota. Um,
Hmm.
but then yeah, I have them beating the Packers in Green Bay, but then losing to the Packers at home in week 14.
Okay.
And I have them ending at 11-6. So a really good
Mm.
season, but not as great as some are hoping for.
Do you have them? Do you have them beating the Bills?
I have them losing to the Bills in week
Okay.
15.
Okay.
Yeah, but I have them ending 3-0. I do
So
have
you have
them
them beating
beating
the
the
Niners.
Niners.
Okay. Yeah, I think the line. I do think that they need to bounce back after their very successful year last year, and I think anything less than like they need to win between 11 and 13 games. I think they need to show that they still have it, that it wasn't a fluke year for them. So next up, I have the Packers. Again, I have them splitting with the Vikings. I have them splitting with the Lions. But a lot of their I would say tough games are at home. Thankfully, they have the Texans at home, which I think will be a great game. I'm bummed that's not a primetime game because I think it should have been with Stroud and Love. Um, I have them beating the Niners at home, and then the Dolphins, a Miami team, Week 13. It's November. I think the Packers handily win that game. But then I have them dropping Week 15 to the Seahawks.
Mm.
Um,
I went back and forth on that game.
so I do have the Packers finishing at 14-3. I think this is near their ceiling. Obviously, they could. You could argue they could go undefeated if they hit their stride and run into teams maybe with some injuries or players like you don't know which of their receivers, which of their weapons are going to have a breakout year, and that's kind of scary for some teams because you're like, okay, Dobbs had a great game last week. You put your number one corner that leaves Wicks with their number two or their number three, and then you have Watson and Reed to deal with. So it's like
Well, no.
it's a blessing in disguise, and then you have Josh Jacobs that you have to worry about. That defense is rejuvenated. I think this team is going to shock a lot of people because there's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, I have the Packers at 14-3 too, which I was kind of surprised at. I not surprised that they're doing well, but that they have one of the, if not the best record in the league. But I don't necessarily think that means that they look like the best team. And I think a lot of people get tripped up by records. I think you saw that with the Chiefs last year. You saw them lose some games, but and then people were like, "Oh, they're not gonna win the Super Bowl.
And then
They're
yeah,
falling." And then we also saw with the Eagles, where it's like, "Oh, they have a great record. They're the best team." But it's like just because they're winning a lot of games, they weren't looking like the best team. So their fall off wasn't shouldn't have been as surprising as people
yeah,
were by it because they weren't playing
yeah,
their best. They obviously played well enough to win, but it wasn't like they were some unstoppable team. They
yeah,
just happened to come out with the
yeah.
wins. And for a lot of people, they get tripped up by the record. So I have the Packers drop into the Rams in week 5. And then which I went back and forth on because they typically do beat the Rams, but and the Rams don't have Aaron
Yeah.
Donald, but I do have them dropping that game. And then I have them dropping to the Lions and at home, and then in Minnesota in Week 17. The Vikings really like trying to spoil the Packers. I
Mm.
could just see that happening where the Packers they're feeling good and they drop that one. Um, but I think the Packers have the chance to. Okay, I guess what I'll say is a lot of people are talking about their offense. And I do think their offense is going to be one of the best in the league. However, people are not talking enough about their defense. I think their defense is going to be a problem. I think their defense is going to be the reason they win actually a lot of these games. I think their offense is going to keep them in games, but I think their defense is going to be a reason for a
Yeah.
lot of their wins. And I'm excited to see this defensive line, a defensive line that the Packers have not had in a long
Yeah.
time. And so that's why I think they end up having that 14-3
Yeah,
record.
I think that you hear it a lot from guys like Rashawn Gary, Kenny Clark, veteran guys. They just love the way Halfley can just let them, all right, like hand in the dirt, go play football. Like you kind of saw that a little bit limited with Joe Barry. You had Preston Smith dropping back in coverage. You had guys that were like, okay, what are we doing? Like we're not really sure. But yeah, with that defense, Joe Barry kind of limited them at some points, and you hear a lot about Rashawn Gary and Kenny Clark, and then you add guys like McKinney, that is a veteran and is one of the best at his position. There's a lot more veteran leadership and veteran experience on that defense, and a new system that I've yet to hear any complaints about is a recipe for success.
I think Barry was a good coach. I just think that his scheme didn't fit well with the players that the Packers have. I think he wasn't getting the most out of them. A name that I think a lot of people need to be ready to hear a lot is Devontae Wyatt. I think he's going to quietly have a really good season. I also think the Packers have a lot of depth in a lot of areas. Maybe not their offensive line and maybe not their kickers. I think those are two concerns that people
Yeah.
have. But nobody really has offensive line depth, if we're being honest. Like where you feel completely comfortable with this guy and this guy and that guy. Um, but I think their defensive line has a lot of depth. I think their corner and safety room has more depth than they've seen in the last couple of years. And obviously on offense, their wide receiver depth is unmatched. And so that's where I think down the stretch they can still be winning games, even with some guys maybe being injured for a game or two. Where other teams, once this guy's down, they don't have another guy that they feel like they can go to as their number
Yeah.
one. So that's why I think the Packers are 14-3. But now we're moving on to the Vikings.
The Vikings, I have them losing their first three. I have them dropping week one of the Giants because they just don't know what's going on. And then obviously I have them losing the Niners, Texans, and then I have them winning in Green Bay, and then I have them beating the Jets before their bye week. So they're 2-3 going into their bye week. But and then I have them beating the Lions, but after their bye week, but then losing their next four: Rams, Colts, Jaguars, Titans, and then just kind of like a win here and there, and I have them finishing at 6-11.
Okay, I have them going 2-3 into their bye week as well. But I do have them beating the Giants week one. I just think that they have more players that they can rely on than the Giants do to win that game, and players who are going to be more ready in a week one game than the
Yeah.
Giants have. And it's hard because there's a lot of players in the Giants that I do like. I just don't think they have it together this season, which kind of sucks. Um, I have the Vikings, I guess, some wins that I do have them having. I do have them beating the Lions once, the Packers once, and the Bears once. So they split
Yeah.
in all the
Yep,
division
I have that
games.
as well. Yep.
Like I said, they do spoil the Packers Week 17 game. Um, but I have them losing four of their last five games, which really ends up hurting them because they play the Falcons, who are going to be a good team and they'll be better at the end of
Yeah.
the season because they're going to have that chemistry. Same thing with the Bears. I had them losing in Seattle because it's in Seattle. I think if it was in Minnesota, I would have had the Vikings winning, but Seattle is a tough place to play, and I have the Seahawks winning that game. Again, they do beat the Packers. That's their bright spot in the end of the season, but then they go into Detroit and they drop another game. But I have them ending 7-10, so they still are above the Bears by one game, and that's a big reason why their Week 17 win against the Packers is so big because they don't end last in their division. But I think a lot of people are sleeping on the Vikings, thinking they're going to be
Yeah.
a 3-4 win team, and I think that they have too much talent on that team
Yeah.
for that to happen.
Yeah. I think we're both on the same page, and I think a lot of people are that it's the Packers and Lions at the top of the division. The other two will kind of figure it out as they go. But I'm very curious with this division to see who wins it because that's going to be. I think that whoever wins the division is a very has an easier path to the Super Bowl. But very interesting for both of these teams, and yeah.
Yeah, so next up, we'll move on to the NFC South. Alright, so next up for the NFC South, which is a really fun division, we have a lot of people excited about the Falcons. But then the Buccaneers, they're sitting there like nobody's talking about us, and we made the playoffs, and we beat the Eagles in the playoffs. Like, talk about us, we're good. And then we have the Panthers, where it's like they probably won't be good, but they have some newness. We want to see how this new scheme is under Canals. And then we have the Saints, where it's like, are you going to end as the third team in the division again, and it's the playoffs? Is Dennis Allen going to be fired? Or are they going to finally do something and make a splash and maybe sneak in as a wild card? So who do you want to start off with, Zach?
We'll start with the Falcons. I have them losing the first three: Steelers, Eagles, Chiefs. The Steelers, I think that the Steelers defense is still a problem. Even without their uncertainty at quarterback, I think they're still going to be a pretty solid team. At Philadelphia is a pretty tough place to play, and then I don't think they're going to beat the Chiefs. Um, I have them splitting with the Panthers, which is interesting, but I don't know. I think there is going to be a little bit of uncertainty. Like Kirk is there, and this is a whole new situation for him. Obviously, Kirk is proven, but I think that like there are some like odd games that I think they lose. I think they lose to the Broncos. I think they lose to the Vikings and the Raiders and the Chargers. They have a late bye week, week 12, but then I do have them winning their last three, but I still have them only going 7-10.
Okay, interesting. Wow. Okay. So I have them winning their week one against the Steelers. They get to host the Steelers, which is a big
Yeah.
deal. I think the Falcons fans are really excited. That stadium's going to be rocking, and I think the Falcons are going to be more prepared than the Steelers are. I mean, heck, the Steelers still don't know who their starting quarterback is, and we
Yeah.
are less than 2 weeks away from the season. And and I think also, I think Kirk Cousins is a really good quarterback. I think Raheem Morris is also going to have these guys really ready. I don't think they're going to be a 14 win team,
Yeah.
but I think they are going to be good. So I have them winning against the Steelers, but I do have them dropping to the Eagles and the Chiefs. They're still trying to find their footing, and these are teams who they kind of know who they are, where the Falcons don't yet. But then I have them winning their next four after that. We're so okay, they hit their stride. But then they dropped to the Buccaneers,
Yeah.
and the Buccaneers are like, "Hey, this is our division still. Get out of here!
Yeah.
Like we are trying to win this thing." They beat the Cowboys, but then they dropped to the Saints, and it's like, what in the world? Like you're looking promising, and then you're losing these
Yeah.
games against division teams. You can't lose these, and then they lose to the Broncos. It's like, all right, we need to get our act together in this bye week because we have some tough games coming up, and we need to try to make a playoff run. So then they win their next four. They go on that run. I also think some teams are going to be dealing with injuries at that point, and again, I think the Falcons have a healthy season.
Yeah.
I really think they just have it together this year. I don't think they're winning the Super Bowl, but I think they just have a really good season. But then they dropped the Commanders. I think Jane Daniels is going to have their team at a good point where after the at the close of the season, the Commanders are feeling really good about their future, and it is in Washington. So I have them dropping at Commanders, but then they beat the Panthers week 18, and they end 11-6. They split with the Tampa Bay, they split with New Orleans, but they lose to the Panthers. Or I mean, they don't lose to the Panthers.
So they sweep the Panthers.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, I have the Panthers. There's just a lot of questions. Bryce Young is still trying to figure out. They're trying to figure out what Bryce Young is. And with that being said, I have them losing their first five. I have them starting 0-5. Saints, Chargers, Raiders, Bengals, Bears. Yeah, I just they don't know who they are yet. There's still so many questions, so many new things that they need to figure out. They need to first of all protect Bryce Young. They did not do that last year. But yeah, I have them going 0-5, and then they have them beating the Falcons and the Commanders, and then I have them beating the Giants, so that they have 3 wins going into their bye week, and then after their bye week, I only have them winning at Tampa, so I have them finishing 4-13.
Yeah, I have them finishing 4-13 as well, but they double the amount of wins that they had last season.
Good for
So
them.
I mean,
Promise,
if you
promise.
say that about other teams, that's a big deal. But no, I think early in the season, I also have them having 3 wins going to their bye. I have them winning week 1 against the Saints.
Okay.
I do. I think having a new head coach, I think there's some fun excitement around this team. I also think New Orleans is going to be fine, but they're not going to be great, and they're going to be a beatable team. I also have them beating the Commanders and then beating the Giants, but then they only win 1 game after their bye, and I have them beating the Cardinals, which I don't think is going to be necessarily an easy game, but I have them winning that game. I think the Cardinals just look dead that game. That's
Yeah.
where the Cardinals are like looking like a mess in that game, and that's how the Panthers win. But I think the Panthers after their bye week, they're playing the Chiefs, they're playing the Buccaneers, they're playing the Eagles, they play the Cowboys,
That's a
Cardinals,
tough
Buccaneers,
stretch,
and
yeah.
Falcons. That is a really tough stretch, but I think that even though they only win one of those games, I think that a lot of those losses are closer than their losses in the early part of the season, which is why they're feeling more hopeful about the season. I think you can see more of the stamp that David Canales put in on this team, and we're seeing like, okay, Bryce Young could be the guy,
Yeah.
and I just think they look a little bit more together, even though they're not showing that in the win column.
Next up, I have the Saints. Their Dennis Allen is their coach. I have them winning week 1 to the Panthers, and then I have them losing their next 5: Cowboys, Eagles, Falcons, Chiefs, and Buccaneers. Cowboys and Chiefs are both on the road, so I don't think they really have a chance for either of those. Um, I have them losing both games this season to the Falcons. Um, they lose. I have them losing like Panthers, Giants, and Buccaneers. I have them losing all of those. Oh, wait, sorry, winning all of those. But I just don't think they have enough to be competitive in the division, and I have them finishing at 6-11.
Okay, I have them splitting with the Falcons and splitting with the Panthers, but they get swept by the Buccaneers. I also have them 6-11. That's really funny. I think Dennis Allen gets fired this year.
Okay.
I do.
Yeah.
I think he might not even make it the whole season. I
Okay.
think he might be one of these guys who gets fired, first week of December.
You think he's gone before the bye week?
That week?
Week 12?
It's possible because some teams do that, but I think that they lose to the Giants, and that's when he gets fired, which is a Week 14 game. I just don't think it was a good hire. I really don't. He's not who they need. It wasn't a hire that was going to bring them an identity, and that's just showing through every season. I think Dennis Allen can be good somewhere else, and that the Saints can have a good season with a guy who knows how to lead this team the right direction. But they have so many questions. So they lack identity in so many places on this team. And yeah, so I have them losing to the Panthers and the Cowboys in their first 2 weeks. But I do have them surprising and beating the Eagles. But then they lose to the Falcons, Chiefs, and Buccaneers. I have them beating the Broncos, losing to the Chargers, beating the Panthers and the Falcons. So they have that 2-game win streak. But then they lose to the Browns. Have a bye week. Then I have them coming out, and they are looking hot, and they beat the Rams, but also the Rams are dealing with injuries at that point. They have an older team. But then they lose 4 of their next 5, and again, the one game I have them winning is against the Raiders, which isn't that big of a win in my opinion. And again, I think Dennis Allen is already gone at that point.
Interesting.
So yeah, 6-11 is their record.
Last up, I have the Buccaneers. I think they're going to win the games that they should and lose the games that they should. I have them losing to the Lions, Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, and then I think they split with the Falcons. I think they're kind of still trying to figure it out before their bye week. They have the Chiefs and Niners before their bye week, which is tough. But then after that bye week, I have them winning their next 5. Giants, Panthers, Raiders, Chargers, and Cowboys, and then I have them dropping their last 2 to the Panthers and the Saints. Mm-hmm. I have them going 9-8, and I have them winning the division. I think that division is sloppy once again. It's just a bunch of still trying to figure it out. But I think Tampa wins that division even at 9-8.
Wow. I have them losing to the Commanders week 1, and then they beat the Lions and the Broncos, and then they lose to the Eagles and Falcons, and then they beat the Saints, Ravens, and then the Falcons. They win that next game, and they lose to the Chiefs and Niners. So it is up and down before their bye week, and it's okay, is this team the team that beat the Ravens or the team that lost to the Chiefs? Which is it? And then after their bye week, I had them only dropping 1 game, and it's against the Chargers in LA, and that stretch is what helps them make the playoffs. Now here's what's interesting. I have the Buccaneers and the Falcons both ending at 11-6. And then you look at their conference games, and they both go 8-4 in the conference. They split in the division against each other. But the Buccaneers sweep New Orleans and sweep the Panthers, where the Falcons split with New Orleans and only swept the Panthers, which is why the Buccaneers end up winning the division. But again, Buccaneers and Falcons have the same record. So Buccaneers win the division at 11-6. Falcons are second at 11-6. Saints are 6-11, and the Panthers are the last 4-13.
Yeah, I think this division is going to be. Oh, aside from the Panthers, I think some teams that kind of figure it out. I think the Saints. I don't have a lot of promise for the Saints, but the Buccaneers and the Falcons, I think, will be fighting for, like you said, fighting for that division. I think the Falcons could be better than I projected for sure. I just don't know what Kirk's going to look like off that Achilles injury.
That's fair. So yeah, next up we're going to move into the NFC East. Alrighty, so next up we have the NFC East, and they're there's some drama in this division just all the way around. There's some excitement. Jayden Daniels the quarterback. There's question marks with Daniel Jones and the Giants, but Malik Neighbors is looking exciting, so they have some bright spots. Then we have Saquon, who's now an Eagle, and the Cowboys. Who are they? Are they the team that lost to the Packers in the playoffs? Are they the team that looked really good in the regular season? How is CD? Is CD playing? Like, what is going on there? So, are the Eagles the first half or the second half of last season? So a lot of fun. Who do you want to start off?
I'll start with the Cowboys. I think they start out very well. I think they only dropped the game to the Ravens before their bye week. I think I have them beating the Niners on the road. They look very promising at the beginning of their season, but the interesting one, I have them losing both the games to the Commanders. Okay. I think, and then I have them splitting with the Eagles. I have them sweeping the Giants because the Giants are the Giants. But I don't think they're as good as last year, but I still have them at 12-5.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez. Okay, I don't have that as much promise for the Cowboys, and I have them having a few winning streaks and a few losing streaks. I mean, there's going to be the jokes about Dallas spelled with 3 or 4 L's, because they're dropping many games in a row, but then they also are like looking like one of the best teams for runs. So I have them losing to the Browns week 1. It's in Cleveland. I think the Browns are being doubted a lot, which I understand the questions. I really do, especially when it just comes to Deshaun Watson, but who knows if CD's playing in this game. I think the Browns' defense is a menace. Also, I don't know why we're not talking about the fact that Kevin Stefanski was Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
Like, they have a really good team. They have a really good team. And Deshaun Watson, if he plays even like 75% of what his potential, they have some real promise. And I think they come out and show that in week 1 against the Cowboys. But then the Cowboys do win against the Saints and the Ravens and the Giants. It's like, okay, they're 3-1, we're feeling good. And then they drop to the Steelers and they drop to the Lions. And so now they're 3-3 going into their bye. So again, who is this team? And then they drop their next 3 because it's 49ers, Falcons, and Eagles. Those are tough games. Their team is not together. I think there's going to be a lot of questions. Is McCarthy getting fired? Is that going to be there? Is he not? What the heck? What is going on? But then they beat the Texans, and they beat the Commanders, and they beat the Giants. So it's like, all right, we're good. Then they drop to the Bengals, but then they beat the Panthers. Then they drop to the Buccaneers, but they end with 2 wins, which helps them sneak, getting a winning record, 9-8. And remember, a lot of teams, or not a lot, but a few teams were fighting for the playoffs, and some got in the playoffs last year with a 9-8 record. So it's not like it's an awful season, but it's not what the Cowboys are wanting at all.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be one of those seasons like, oh, Cowboys fans every year, this is our year. Like, see, we're the same team as always. Like, double-digit wins, 12 wins, and then I don't think they're going to make any noise in the playoff again. And then you're going to have the questions start to come up. What about McCarthy? What about Dak? What about CeeDee? What about Micah? They're in for a lot of drama this offseason if they don't do anything in the playoffs.
And that's why I think they're actually going to have not as good of a season. I think the questions are really going to be answered in the regular season. That's not going to be left up to, oh, they were this in the regular season, but then they were this in the playoffs. I think Jerry Jones is going to be like, okay, it's transferred from it's this to the playoffs. So we're looking this way in the regular season too, and now it's time to make some actual changes.
Fair enough.
Maybe including an ownership. But
he
won't do that.
No, he won't. We know that. Next up, I have the Giants. I have the Giants as the worst team in football. I have them winning 2 games. I have them 2-15. I think they win week 1 to the Vikings, and then they beat the Commanders in week 9. But just looking at their schedule, Browns, Cowboys, at Seahawks, Bengals, Eagles, at Steelers. They have the Cowboys. They have the Ravens. You've seen how Daniel Jones has played in the preseason. Their offensive line. You have your one shining bright spot in Malik Neighbors, but again, you still have Daniel Jones attempting to throw him the football.
Still have Brian Daboll as your head coach.
Yeah, that too.
I'm not.
Daboll does not. Seems like he does not want Daniel Jones there. I can't blame him.
Talk about a stubborn coach.
Yeah. So Daboll needs to go. I think he goes mid-season. Daniel, I think he should. If it was up to me, I would have paid him. he wouldn't be a Giant. But again, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I just have them winning 2 games. They're just a complete dumpster fire, and yeah, 2-15.
I had the Giants winning 11 games. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I have them only winning 3,
Oh,
so
nice.
better than you. I have them beating the Commanders in week 2. I have them beating the Saints in week 14. Their big win. They're like, wow, look at us. We made this team feel terrible about
Yeah.
themselves this week because the Steelers like to drop games that they shouldn't.
Yeah.
They at the most random times, and the Steelers lose to the Giants at home. Like it's
week
like
8.
what in the world? Is this when Russell Wilson gets benched or Justin Fields gets benched for the other one? I don't know, but what are we doing?
Yeah.
So that's the Giants' bright spot, but that's in week 8. And
Yeah.
I hope. Okay, I'm not actually going to say this. But they get swept by the Eagles. They get swept by the Cowboys. They split with the Commanders. Yeah, they're 2-10 in the conference. 3-14 is their record.
Yeah. Next up, I have the Eagles. I have them losing week 1 to the Packers, but then winning their next 3 before their week 5 bye week, and then lose to the Browns, winning against the Giants, and then I have them losing in Cincinnati and at home against the Jaguars. But then I think they go into Dallas and win, and then their only losses. I think they split with the Cowboys. But I think they lose to the Steelers and they lose to the Ravens. So that AFC North team, the AFC North division gives them some trouble. I have them finishing at 10-7.
Interesting. I have them losing to the Packers and losing to the Saints, but they beat the Falcons, beat the Buccaneers, so they go into the bye week 2-2. But then they go on a winning streak. They beat the Browns, they beat the Giants, they beat the Bengals, and then they drop to the Jaguars. And it's like, you just beat the Bengals and Cincy, and then you drop to the Jags? Come on now. And then they go into Dallas and they beat the Cowboys. They do, in that game. And then they beat the Commanders. But then they drop to the Rams, who, again, I think the Rams are going to be pretty good. Then they beat the Ravens because again, I think the Ravens can be a really good team, but I also I really do.
Yeah.
But then also it's like sometimes I feel like the Ravens will show us where it's like they're really good, and then when they have the games that it's like to show who they really are, they don't win enough of those, and so that's why we have so many questions every time when they're in the playoffs. And then the Eagles beat the Panthers, but then they drop to the Steelers, beat the Commanders. Then they drop to the Cowboys. So again, I have that situation where they go into Dallas and beat them, but then Dallas goes into Philly and beats them. And then they end with a win against the Giants. They end at 11-6. They split with the Cowboys, sweep the Giants, sweep the Commanders, are 8-4 in the conference.
So pretty similar with the Giants and the Eagles. Last up, I have the Commanders. I have them going 2-2 to start. I think they lose at Tampa, and at Cincy, but they beat the Giants and the Cardinals. And then I have them losing their next 7. Browns, Ravens, Panthers, Bears, Giants, Steelers, and Eagles. I think they beat the Cowboys at home. I actually have them beating the Cowboys both weeks because I think week 18, the Cowboys they're not fighting for that top seed in the division. Like, they're going to win their division, and they don't have no need to play their starters week 18, so I think that's why the Commanders win week 18. They have a late bye week in week 14, but then after the bye week, they lose their next 3, but then they beat the Cowboys, and I have them finishing at 4-13.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have them feeling good about themselves going into week 5 against the Browns because they are 3-1 and they are riding high. And the one game they lose is the game that everyone would think they would win, which is against the Giants. And then they lose to the Browns, and they lose to the Ravens, and they lose to the Panthers and the Bears. And it's like, okay, this is a wake-up call. We're not as good as we thought we were. Then they beat the Giants, lose to the Steelers and the Eagles and the Cowboys and the Titans. They have another rough stretch. Then they have their bye week. They beat the Saints, lose to the Eagles, beat the Falcons, lose to the Cowboys. They end 6-11. Again, they show some promise, but they're not making the playoffs. But you can see why Jane Daniels is the future, see what Dan Quinn has in getting this team together. They get swept by the Eagles and the Cowboys, which is like, okay, those are things we can't do because these are the teams that we're trying to knock out, of their spot. But then they do split with the Giants. They're 5-7 in the conference. So for my division standings, it's Eagles at 11-6, Cowboys at 9-8, Commanders at 6-11, and Giants at 3-14.
Yeah, I had the Cowboys at 12-5, Eagles at 10-7, Commanders at 4-13, and Giants at 2-15. I think the Cowboys win this division. But if the Eagles come out and win it because there's too many I think Dallas could easily just flip upside down and just be. I could see them going under 500 if there's too many concerns. If CD gets unhappy, if Dak gets unhappy,
That's unhappy.
huh?
Yeah, he is unhappy.
Yeah. Well, and then who knows about Micah? Who knows about Mike McCarthy? I think there's a lot of. I think they are walking the line and they did it to themselves by keeping McCarthy around. I don't think he should have been back after they lost to the Packers, but I think you're playing with fire this year in Dallas. So
Yeah, I think the Cowboys would be looking at a completely different team next year.
yes,
I really do.
Yep.
And I'm not necessarily saying completely different when it comes to wins and losses, but just their main guys, coaches, quarterbacks, maybe receivers.
Yeah.
It can be different, and it's because the season is soul searching season, and it's time to make changes. But last but not least, we're going to dive into the NFC West. All right, last up we have the NFC West.
First up, I have the Cardinals. I think this is a productive year for them. I think they kind of start out pretty rough just based on their schedule. I think they lose week 1 to the Bills, and then they win. They beat the Rams, but then they lose their next 4: Lions, Commanders, and then They have a tough stretch. They go to San Francisco and to Green Bay. I think they will lose both of those games. And then I just like they have a week 11 bye week. I think they're a lot better after their bye week, and they're just a lot better than last year. I think Marvin Harrison shows why he was the best receiver in the draft, and I think they go 7-10. I don't think they are like competing for the division, but I think they have a lot of improvement.
See, I think the Cardinals are going to be better than the record shows. Like, that's what I have, because I have them going 5-12, but I just think they drop a few close games, and they do have some tough games on the schedule, like you mentioned, the 49ers, the Packers, Chargers, the Jets. Like, these are all teams that, they're probably going to have some promise this season. The Bills week 1. So I have them losing to the Bills, but I have them beating the Rams week 2. But then they drop to the Lions and the Commanders. I have them surprising the Niners and beating the Niners week 5. But then they drop to the Packers. I have them beating the Chargers. So it's like they look pretty good. And then
they have their moments.
Yeah, and then they lose to the Dolphins and the Bears and the Jets before their bye. Coming out of their bye, they do go into Seattle and win that game.
Really?
Lose to the Vikings and then beat the Seahawks again. So they show some clear promise, but then they lose their last 4. They drop to the Patriots and Panthers, who they shouldn't, but I think the Patriots and Panthers are going to feel better about themselves at that point and be a little bit more consistent. The new head coaches are going to, pick up some wins there, and then they lose to the Rams and the Niners, who are, the better teams in this division, and they're just they just have the better coaches, better quarterbacks, and they're not going to drop those week 17 and 18 games. So again, the Cardinals end up being 5-12, but they clearly show that they have some fight and they have some it factor to them. So they sweep the Seahawks, split with the Rams and the Niners, but are 4-8 in the conference. So they drop too many games, but again, they're better than their record shows.
The Rams, I believe I don't like to predict injuries, but the Rams are an older team, and I think the injury bug hits them hard. I think they lose their first 3: Lions, Cardinals, and Niners. They beat the Bears, but then they lose to the Packers. They're 1-4 going into their bye week. And then due to the early bye week, they kind of they hit some injuries. They lose to the Vikings. They lose to the Seahawks, but they lose to the Raiders, beat the Vikings, lose to the Seahawks. Kind of an up and down. They lose to the Dolphins, beat the Patriots and Eagles. They beat the Saints, but then they lose their next 4: Bills, Niners, Jets, Cardinals, and then they beat the Seahawks. I have them going 5-12. Yeah. I don't know. I just think you
have them going 5-12, a team that Tom Brady thinks is going to be one of the better teams this year. That's very interesting. Well, I have them drop. They start 0-2. They lose to the Lions and they lose to the Cardinals. But then they beat the Niners, Bears, and Packers, so they go into the bye 3-2. And then after the bye, they are solid. I have them as the team in the NFL. They go undefeated week 7 through 12. but then they lose their next three in weeks 13 through 15, and then they win their next three, Jets,
Yeah.
Cardinals, and Seahawks. So they do end up winning 12 games. They
Okay.
have some rough stretches, are a really rough stretch, but they are one of the better teams. They win some games, by a game-winning field goal kind of deal. So yeah, I have them going 12-5. They sweep Seattle, split with the Cardinals and the Niners, but they're 8-4 in the conference.
Yeah, this team, I don't. I think that, like you said, Brady thinks they're going to be very good. I think they could be very good. I think there's a lot of uncertainty. Because like, what if Puka takes a little bit of a step back? Cooper Cup, we don't know. He's dealt with some injury. Does he get injured again? Stafford's not exactly young. I trust McVay's.
Kyron Williams?
Huh?
Kyron
Yeah,
Williams?
I trust McVay's offense, but I think his hands are kind of tied with the older team that he's dealing with. But again, this is all I don't, like I said, I don't like predicting injuries. I just think that because they're an older team, they're going to have some injuries, and that's
Wow.
going to derail their season.
Wow.
So
So we have the opposite record.
opposite record. So
Alright, who up next?
the Niners. The Niners are the Niners. I think they lose.
Bang bang Niner game.
They lose one game before their bye week, and that's Week 8 to the Cowboys. And then after the bye week, their only loss is the Packers. I think they go 15-2. I think they're like, all right, enough of this. Like,
Jeez.
yeah, I think enough of this. Like, okay, we're sick and tired of people like, oh, this is only a regular season team. I think they come out every week aggressive and they don't overlook any team. So I think they are going to be the team to beat, not only in the NFC but in the NFL.
Jeez. Okay. I have them losing two games before their bye week against the Rams and the Cardinals. But they beat the Jets, the Vikings, the Patriots, the Seahawks, the Chiefs, and the Cowboys. And then after their bye week, they beat the Bucks and the Seahawks, and then they lose to the Packers. But then they win their next three, beating the Bills, Bears, and Rams. But then they drop against the Dolphins and against the Lions. So it's like, okay, this is not what we need before the playoffs. And then they beat the Cardinals week 18. But I also have them ending 12-5. They sweep the Seahawks, are split with the Cardinals and split with the Rams. Conference record is 8-4 as well. So who is it? That's a
Uh,
fun one to figure out.
uh, Last up, we have the Seahawks. I have them going 0-4 to start. Broncos, Patriots, Dolphins, Lions. There are definitely some winnable games like the Broncos and the Patriots, but I don't think they have it together yet. They beat the Giants, lose the next three to the Niners, Falcons, Bills, beat the Rams before their bye week. Niners out of their bye week. That's not fun. They lose that one. They beat the Cardinals, and then I think they kind of shocked the Vikings at home just because it's in Seattle, so I think that's a tough place to play. But then they lose their last three, and they have them going 4-13. New system, a lot of questions.
Their last three, the last two.
Last three: Vikings, Bears, Rams.
You wait. You have them beating the Vikings or losing to the Vikings?
Oh, sorry, losing the Vikings. My
Okay.
fault.
Um, I have them starting out 3-2. They beat the Broncos, Patriots, and the Giants. Drop to the Dolphins and the Lions. So win the winnable games and lose
Yeah.
the games that aren't as easy. And then they don't win another game until week 16 against the Vikings. I have them beating the Vikings and then losing their last two. So they end 4-13. Um, I don't know. I don't dislike the Seahawks. I just don't think they win a lot of
Yeah.
games. They're not with Pete Carroll anymore, who you just felt like he's going to have their team together. We don't know if Geno Smith's going to be great or not.
Yeah.
We really don't know a lot about their team. I think they have some really good players on defense, a few bright spots on offense, but it's nothing where they're going to be putting up much fight this season. They get swept completely in their division, and they're 2-10 in the conference, and that kills them. So what I end up having for the division, because again, there's like the tiebreaker. Well, Seahawks are last at 4-13, and Cardinals are third at 5-12. But like I said, the Rams and the Niners are both 12-5, and they both sweep Seattle and are split with each other and the Cardinals, and then they both are 8-4 in the conference. So we had to look at the other games that they had in common and all of that with
Yeah.
the tiebreakers. Rams end up getting the 1 seed. 49ers are the 2 seed in the division.
Interesting.
So for the playoffs, what is your playoff standings for the NFC?
NFC, I have the Niners as the 1 seed, Packers as the 2, Cowboys at the 3, Buccaneers at the 4, and then Lions at 5, Eagles at 6, and Falcons at 7.
Okay. I have the Packers as 1, Rams as 2, Eagles as 3, Buccaneers at 4. 49ers are the 5th seed, but they're a fantastic team. Lions are 6th, and Falcons are 7th. So taking it back to our AFC, then what did you have for the AFC?
AFC, I had Chiefs as their 1 seed, Ravens as the 2, Texans. Jets at the 3, Texans at the 4, and then Chargers at 13 and 4. They're the 5 seed, and Bills and Browns are both 10 and 7, but Bills at 6, Browns at 7.
Okay, I had Chiefs as the 1 seed, Texans as 2, Ravens as 3, Bills as 4, Colts at 5, Chargers 6, and Steelers 7. So, okay, who are your 7 seeds?
Falcons and Browns.
Okay, I have Falcons and Steelers. 6 seed?
Eagles and Bills.
Lions and Chargers.
5 seed?
Yeah.
5 seed, I have Lions and Chargers.
I have Niners and Colts.
4 seed, Buccaneers and Texans.
I have Buccaneers and Bills.
3 seed, I have Cowboys and Jets.
I have Eagles and Ravens.
2 seed, I have Packers and Ravens.
I have Rams and Texans.
And then Niners and Chiefs are the 1 seeds.
Packers and Chiefs.
Interesting.
Oh, this is fun. So yeah, those are our predictions. Now, we are going to have 2 more podcasts before the first game of the regular season. So, actually, I think what we're going to end up doing is we're going to have a podcast next week, and next week's podcast is going to be talking about the games that we're looking forward to most, like our top 3 week 1 games. We'll get to break down who actually ends up being the quarterback for, the Steelers and the Patriots. We might have some news on CD if he's going to be playing week 1. We might have some news on Brandon Ayuk. Maybe some more injuries or coming back from injuries. We'll have some more answers to those questions. But then we're going to kind of change it up, and we're going to have a podcast dropped on the Wednesday before the season. And that will have our official week 1 predictions just based on possible changes. And we'll dive deeper into each and every game of the week 1 season, which I cannot wait for. Like, just look at those first games. Like, every game is perfect. Yeah. I love it. I cannot wait.
So, like Susanna said, we'll have our normal one on Saturday, where we just talk about all like the news right before the season, and then we'll switch it up and we'll have one the Wednesday before the first NFL game.
Yeah, and then from there, we're still trying to figure out when we'll be dropping episodes, how many episodes we'll have a week, all of that, but we'll let you guys know. But we are so excited for the season. We also might talk about some of our fantasy things because we both have a fantasy team, so next week maybe we'll show you guys our fantasy teams.
We'll see you all next week.